Right, guys, welcome to the second FPL uh, show, let's say, that we are doing. And I think it'd be good. Obviously, we did a really good introduction last week as to what the game is, which obviously, took us a little bit longer, and then did a review of the games, preview of the games. I thought it'd be good. Every Thursday, we'll do basically a review of the previous weekend, how it went. This is all good, my personal experience, so you can see how good or bad I am. I'll leave that for your judgment to decide. Um, and I want to actually almost take this through chronologically because actually things started pretty decently for me. I had a couple of Liverpool players. If you were here on Saturday on the Twitch watch along, you would have seen me be really happy about Tottenham Hotspur's recovery because it got me some bonus points. And it was actually quite interesting that when it came to the Chelsea Man United game, I was laughing basically because majority of my league that I'm in with my family had Robert Sanchez as a Chelsea goalkeeper. And if we want to talk about the biggest review of the Manchester United Chelsea game, was the fact that Robert Sanchez got a red card in the 5th minute. What did that mean? It absolutely, screwed them over. We'll look into. I think he got -3 points, and so I was laughing because I got the, the better of them. And then came Sunday, where I had Arsenal players, I had a Bournemouth player who did decently, and I had Sunderland players who did well. I'm really happy with Sunderland's result. I got points from their goal. However, as you're about to see in my points that I got, I had a player sent off as well. Now, it was quite a feeling, and actually, I had an awful week. 28 points. The Chelsea goalkeeper that got sent off had a major impact on the players I had. A player that was that conceded 2 goals as a result and got a yellow card, so got nothing. Majority of my points came from Kudus and Triffer, who did. Triffer has done really well, getting really good bonus points, clean sheets. That's proving to be a really good buy, and it's also wrecking my strategy a little bit because I like to do 2 transfers in one go. You build up 1 free transfer every week, and it had me in the dilemma of, do I need to do a transfer? Well, thankfully, I've looked into it, and we'll look into it later. I don't think I do, but we can look into that. Other big talking points, again, there was midweek games that English clubs played a part in. I don't think there was any on the Monday, was there? No, but there was on the Tuesday. So Tuesday, we had the start of the 3rd round of the English League Cup. So basically, the top 4 leagues in England, which is the Premier League, the Championship, English League 1, English League 2. All the teams have a knockout competition, which has a final in February, and it's one of the 4 big trophies of England to win. And we had some interesting fixtures. So Brighton and Hove Albion played against Barnsley. I'm pretty sure Barnsley are in the 3rd tier. So that 6-0, really good result for Brighton, but one you would expect them to get. Surprise was that Burnley lost to Cardiff City. Cardiff City are also in the 3rd tier. Burnley are a Premier League team. So to see them lose to Cardiff City, a bit of an alarm bell to ring there. Now, there are some lesser teams in the Premier League that will basically make sure that their first team plays in Premier League games to give them the best chance. So that could be a factor in that. But something to keep an eye on, that, not expected for Burnley to be losing matches like that. Fulham, I think Cambridge United are also in the 3rd tier as well, so you expect Fulham to win. Lincoln City, losing to Chelsea. Lincoln City again. I think they're in the third tier as well. Might be in the second tier actually. Don't need to worry about Wigan and Wickham because they're not in the leagues. We had a all Premier League tie. Wolverhampton Wanderers against Everton, getting a win. Could this be the start of starting to get a rise out of them? Could Wolverhampton Wanderers now start to be getting points? One to keep an eye out for. Wouldn't jump on the bandwagon just yet of going, Wolverhampton Wanderers, they're back, start bringing Wolverhampton Wanderers players in, but something interesting. And Liverpool beating Southampton 2-1, Southampton being a second division team, but a very good second division team. They were in the Premier League last season. But in that match, and whilst it has nothing to do with the Premier League, this does. Hugo Ekitike got a second yellow, got a red card in the match, which means he is suspended for Liverpool's next game, which just so happens to have an effect on the Fantasy Premier League. We'll do a bit of a review of all the suspensions in a little bit. On Wednesday, it continued. Manchester City and Huddersfield Town. Again, Huddersfield Town, I'm pretty sure, again, is in the third tier. A lot of third tier clubs that were carrying on. Manchester City expected to get a win there, and they did. Interesting side note was the fact that a couple of players that played for Manchester City, their dad used to play for Liverpool when I used to watch them. So that made me feel old. Newcastle United against Bradford City. Again, Bradford City being a third-tier team, so you would expect Newcastle United to beat them. Tottenham Hotspur against Doncaster Rovers. Doncaster Rovers in the second tier, so actually a nice result for Tottenham Hotspur, 3-0. And Arsenal against Port Vale, again, another second to third tier. But that wasn't the end of the Premier League teams playing in matches, because we also had the start of the Europa League, and this is where we had Nottingham Forest play against Real Betis. Now, Real Betis were in a final of one of the lesser European competitions last season, so they are a very competitive group. Narrowly lost out to Chelsea, I'm pretty sure, as well. 2-2 result. Is it a start of good things to come from Nottingham Forest? A little bit, although they did have a 2-0 lead. And they were losing 1-0. They went into a 2-1 lead and lost the win at the end. They got a draw, but still, embers that we're starting to see from Nottingham Forest. And maybe after 2 draws in a row, the draw against Burnley and the draw against Real Betis, that maybe they're getting back to what you would expect them to be, which is probably the 10th to 13th best team in the league. And we're recording this on Thursday, so these are live results, but also Aston Villa are going to be playing literally in a minute as I am speaking to you. So they'll be playing against Bologna. So that is, again, more teams playing in midweek. So if we're going to talk about in terms of a preview of the games that are to come, so that'll basically mean that Chelsea, Brighton, Liverpool, Manchester City, Burnley, Nottingham Forest, Tottenham Hotspur, Wolverhampton Wanderers, Aston Villa and Fulham, and Arsenal, and Newcastle, and even Everton, all of them have played midweek games, so they've got a little bit of extra complications they've got to deal with in terms of that. So, in terms of, I'll give you a bit of a rundown of my team and how I will be setting them out. It's a fairly simple one, because I don't, apart from obviously Reynaldo, not really much in terms of that, but these are the players that I'm keeping an eye out for, as long as there aren't any injuries or anything like that. And again, we'll be doing a live watch along of the 3 p.m. games as they come on that. I mentioned about the suspended players, and this is probably worth showing you guys in terms of the player availability. Let me just switch over to the larger screen so you get a chance of seeing it. So, whenever you see these sort of like 75 chance of playing and everything like that, more often than not, they do end up playing. I mean, you got dead legs and things like that. They'll probably get a substitute appearance. With the exception of players like Aki Mpong and Mark Yu, because they're almost like sort of younger players in the team, so might not get in as much involvement, let's say. But in terms of suspensions, we have got Ekatike, who is out until the 4th of October. That's because he got a red card as a second yellow card. 2 yellow cards equals 1 red. So he gets a 1 game ban. So he is literally just suspended for this week. So if you do have him in your squad and you can work around it, might not be the worst in keeping him anyway. But the big one, Ronaldo, because it was a straight red card he got, he is suspended for 3 games. So it is basically a month that he is out on that. Other things of note, Chelsea are playing Brighton, and Buonanotte is actually on loan at Chelsea from Brighton. So because of that, he cannot play against Brighton. So he won't be available either. Something to keep an eye out for. Again, if you can shoulder um, that weight of having Buonanotte in the squad, might be worth keeping an eye on in terms of that. Casemiro was another one suspended in the Chelsea Man United game. So again, 1 match because it was a second yellow card. Another one who got a straight red was Souček in, I think I was actually in the last match though, so don't have to worry about that one. But another couple of weeks that you've got to deal with when it comes to Souček. No other suspensions of note really to speak of that anyone would be expecting. But those are the big ones. In terms of the injuries, like I said, the 75% chances are not big ones. Leone, he did have a big injury at the midweek, but he is, 4th choice centre back, so not too much to worry about. Higapi, bit more serious. That's one to keep an eye out on. If you do have him in your team, probably won't be worth maybe taking him out. Kushinov is another interesting one to keep an eye out for. But I think the biggest injury, where is it? Biggest injury was the injury to Madueke. He has been phenomenal this season, but he's had a really nasty injury. I think it might even be an ACL injury, so it's going to be one that's going to have him out for quite some time. So that will be one to a player that probably you'll have to sacrifice now. And Cole Palmer's a bit of an interesting one as well. It says 75% chance, but he came off against Manchester United very early, in fact. So that's something to be concerned with. Before, obviously, I ran you through my team, so it's now all about the matches to come, and I think it's probably safer. Yeah, we can actually do it here. So here are the matches that we've got. Pretty much everyone's playing. So Brentford versus Manchester United is the first one. Interesting one, this one, because Brentford had a decent start and have now dropped off a little bit in terms of their last match against Fulham. Manchester United had a little bit of a rise in the last match against Chelsea. So it's a bit of a tight one to try and call between the two. The Casemiro suspension could have an impact on Manchester United and the way they play. So that's something to be concerned about. And the other thing that is worth keeping an eye on, which is the reason why I have Kelleher in goal playing against Manchester United, is the fact that a lot of Brentford players are ex-Liverpool players. They've got Henderson, they've got Kelleher, they've got Carvalho and Vandenberg. There might be a bit of extra effort, let's say, in terms of wanting to keep Manchester United out. So that could be something that you can't really put onto facts and stats. But I suspect this one could end up being a low-scoring draw, let's say. But a lot of saves from Kelleher, which is the reason why I'm picking him. I don't think he will get a clean sheet, but I do think he'll get a lot of saves. Next up, we have Chelsea versus Brighton, and the Buonanotte thing does have a small impact, but not a major impact. Chelsea in an interesting situation, because I'm pretty sure they managed to get the Sanchez red card overturned, because I've not seen him suspended. But if he is still suspended, then Jorgensen, unless he was suspended just for the midweek game, that is. Jorgensen as a goalkeeper, I mean, fairly decent, but nothing crazy. And Brighton have this habit of, sort of like jumping on Chelsea players. I'm still going to put some faith in Chelsea players. In fact, a lot of faith in Chelsea players, and I'm just hoping that something good comes of it. And this is basically the week that I hang on until I make a dual transfer. So this could be a bit of a bad week for me if this goes wrong. Crystal Palace versus Liverpool. It feels like Crystal Palace and Liverpool have played against each other so many times. In fact, they've drawn against each other in another round. I think it's like sort of like the past out of the past 10 competitive games that Liverpool have played, Crystal Palace have been in like 4 of them. It's just wild. Crystal Palace are a bit of a bogey team. Now, of course, Liverpool have got their 6-game winning streak, but Crystal Palace are dangerous. Very, very dangerous. There is a lot of players to keep an eye out for. Sarr and Kamada and Mateta. Have Liverpool clicked to the point where they can deal with this? Potentially, although this match is at Selhurst Park, is at Crystal Palace's home ground, so this could be a tricky one. It would be a gamble having Liverpool players in. I'm putting Salah in because he just ends up being a banker anyway. But bit of a risk having Liverpool players in, and if you put Crystal Palace players in, I wouldn't be surprised. What would be interesting is to see how Gahey performs at Crystal Palace. But apart from that, very competitive. That's going to be one of the games that we react to at 3 p.m. We've got Leeds versus Bournemouth next. Now, Leeds I'm pretty sure their last match, they did quite well. They beat Wolves, of course, 3-1. So really, really good from Leeds. Dominic Calvert-Lewin performed fantastically, and it's great to see him performing. And Bournemouth seems to be doing well in terms of like sort of defensively, conceding very few goals. So that could be a very competitive match. Almost that sort of unstoppable force versus some immovable object sort of thing. In Leeds being the unstoppable force, Bournemouth being the immovable object. So could be an interesting one, could be a tight one. If I was to pick, I get the feeling that even if Leeds score, Bournemouth defenders will still get some good points. I think they'll be basically defending for their lives. So Leeds attackers, Bournemouth defenders, could be worth a punt. Man City versus Burnley. Obviously, Burnley lost in midweek. They did get a draw against Nottingham Forest, though, so that's something to keep an eye out for. And if this was the Manchester City of 5 years ago, I would be saying go all in for Man City players. I'm not so sure. Do I think Man City are going to win this? Absolutely. But I don't think it's going to be ridiculous amounts of points for Manchester City players that everyone is thinking of. We've got Nottingham Forest versus Sunderland as an evening match. That could be interesting. Nottingham Forest obviously on this sort of rocky situation because of the coach change. And Sunderland, again, they just seem to be nicking points here and there. Could be an interesting one. Nico Williams was fantastic, and so if there's anyone that is one to keep an eye out for in terms of getting assists and goals, have Nico Williams from Nottingham Forest in. Might not necessarily get the points in terms of clean sheets, but looks like he's having a bit more of involvement. So certainly one to potentially keep an eye out for, see if he does exactly the same as he did last weekend. If he does, that could be a player to really go all in on and bring into the club, especially your clubs, especially as he's a cheap option. For Sunderland, the one player that just seems to be performing well, and I'm putting him in, Isidore. I want to show you guys Isidore and his form. 9 points, 2 points, 8 points. If you actually look at his full profile, there's only been 2 out of the 5 games where he hasn't scored, which is wild. And interestingly enough, the last 2 games, he's getting picked a lot more. So that could be certainly one to keep an eye out for. If there's anyone that's going to get a goal against Nottingham Forest, it feels like Isidore's going to be that one. So he is certainly one to have in your teams, I think, if he keeps his form up. I kind of went on a gamble for him because at the end of last season, the last game of the season, he scored the winner for Sunderland to get them into the Premier League, and it's worked out well for me. But yeah, Isidore is certainly a player to watch out for. Spurs versus Wolves next. Now, this is going to be a test of Wolves. I don't think they're going to pass the test, but given their performance against Everton, they could provide a bit more of a sterner test to Spurs than we might have thought. That said, however, I do think Spurs are going to have a massive overpower, which is the reason why I've got these players in. I'd perhaps focus more on midfielders and attackers than defenders because Wolves still managed to score, still managed to do well. And there was that player, was it Kechi, I think his name was, from Wolves, a defender that seems to score goals. Always worth keeping an eye on defenders that like to score goals because they end up being amazing. A classic case in point, Trent Alexander-Arnold over the past 3 years was brilliant for Fantasy Premier League, despite the fact that his defending was rubbish, and that was because he used to put crosses in the box. He used to make shots at the box. He would get goals and assists like every other game. And if Ketchy's another one of those, then again, another one to keep an eye out for. Then we come on to Aston Villa versus Fulham. I've got no skin in the game for this. Aston Villa's one to be concerned about. They're in European competition, so they performed well last year, and now we're in a situation where, 3 points they've got? It might not even be that. They're currently relegation form. Bit concerning, and Fulham got a 3-1 victory last weekend, so again, another stern test for Aston Villa. Could be an interesting one. If there was ones to take a punt on, I'd say like Harvey Elliott for Aston Villa performed really well. And for Fulham, they've got a lot of wingers that have been doing well. In fact, let's see. I think it's in transfers, isn't it? Let's just go to transfers. And let's see if we can see who it is from Fulham that has been performing well. I'll need to make sure I do it right, not by searching there. So, Anderson's been getting good points, although only 4 points in the Brentford game where they won 3-1. But Iwobi getting 13 points. Fulham had this situation for a while that they were struggling for the first few weeks, but now they've got a situation where Harry Wilson got 9 points, brilliant player, scores free kicks like nothing else. Iwobi getting 13 points. Now, there's a lot of goals and assists that are coming in. In terms of strikers, Mooney's got 5, so there's a couple of midfielders for Fulham to keep an eye out for. It does seem to be mainly, I'm just double checking that there's no surprise ones. Yes, it does seem to be mainly Iwobi and Wilson, and potentially, so Iwobi and Wilson are the two main ones for Fulham to keep an eye out for. They are brilliant players, I've got to say. That is certainly something to keep an eye out for in terms of Fulham players. That one's an interesting one. I'd actually almost have a close eye on Aston Villa and Fulham match to see, which is on the Sunday, to see which one almost shows that they are on the upturn. because if whichever one of those wins, I would suggest maybe looking into their teams and maybe just adding a player from their team into your squad. Then we got Newcastle versus Arsenal. Arsenal are back to their defensive ways. Speaking truthfully with you guys, this might be my last week that I have Gyökeres in the team. And that's got nothing on Gyökeres that he's a poor player or anything like that. It's just down to the fact of the way that they play doesn't seem to suit Gyökeres. Newcastle, they've got their player Voltemade, performed decently last week, I'm pretty sure. And might be clicking into gear. Plus, given the match is at Newcastle, that is potentially one to have some Newcastle players in. And then finally, Everton versus West Ham. It's the David Moyes derby, as he's managed both clubs. Ultimately, and this might sound really basic and really rubbish analysis, but whoever's playing against West Ham, maybe have a player or two in there. Because that seems to be the way to go. In fact, Arsenal are playing West Ham next week. So, yeah, that is the review. Anyways, that is it in terms of the review of what for me was a very terrible weekend and a preview for hopefully what's going to be a bit more of a brighter weekend. Feel free to let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Feel free to let me know if there's any players that you are bringing in, if there's any players you think are terrible picks for me in the squad. And until next time, guys, which either is the Saturday when you can join me on the watch along on twitch.tv/the ND Ninja, or for the next review and preview, which will be next week. Take care of yourselves and see you later.